Hey, I'm Jesse. Let's have a devotion. We're going to look at Proverbs 31, verses 10 through 31. I referred to this text because I was considering it as a cross-reference for the Mother's Day sermon. I bounced the idea off my bride, and she was like, every Christian woman has Proverbs 31 memorized. And I was like, oh, okay, all right, we'll save it for when we're in Proverbs, I guess. And I said that in my sermon, and afterwards there were a couple of women in the church who were like, I think I'm not as holy as your wife because I don't have Proverbs 31 memorized. And then another one was like, yeah, I don't know what Proverbs 31 is. And so I was like, okay, yeah, maybe they're right. Maybe my wife is just like extra holy. And it kind of dawned on me, like, yeah, she is like a Proverbs 31 woman herself. So of course, my wife's attitude towards Proverbs 31 would be like, everybody knows that. The first 9 verses of Proverbs 31, it may surprise you, are actually very different. The portion that makes this the namesake for a huge percentage of women's ministries across the U.S. is that it deals with a wife of noble character. The original audience, the intended audience, is like the sons of King Lemuel, the young princes whom he's training to become king one day. So it may shock you. If I could name off the top of my head like 3 women's ministries at churches that I've known around like Pensacola and Orlando and Nashville and Seattle that are called Proverbs 31 ministries, when Proverbs 31 was originally addressed to men. But absolutely, it is a worthy namesake for a Bible-based ministry because it does set the godly standard for a wife of noble character. It is the final proverb, and that's relevant because the Proverbs jump from topic to topic in a way that Dr. David Prince, one of my favorite professors at Southern Seminary, he's the pastor, I think, of Ashland Avenue Baptist Church in Kentucky. Those are always some of my favorite seminary professors, the guys who are also pastors themselves, the guys that would slam the textbook shut and be like, let me tell you how this really plays out in the real world. And they'd roll their sleeves up and go off curriculum to tell us what it's really like. Well, he expressed frustration initially when he was putting together a study in the Proverbs. Like, why can't all the financial Proverbs be together? And all the Proverbs on relationships be together? And all the Proverbs on how to speak in a way that's godly all be together? And like, why aren't they categorized? Because you can read through a proverb and try to write a sermon on it. I've done this. I've preached the Proverbs before, and it is difficult. It's hard because they will jump everywhere. But what Dr. Prince said helped him kind of apply the Proverbs as they are, was that like if you're struggling, if you have some sort of inner character issue that like the upper portion of a proverb will hit you in, then there's a good chance that you might also be struggling in your relationships, which are the next portion. And if you're struggling in these 2 areas, that can be further compounded by your financial problems. And so really, like, if you imagine it through the eyes of someone whose world is falling apart, it's almost like a uniquely packaged set of applicable wisdoms per day, one for each day of the month, because there are 31 Proverbs. And the reason the Proverbs 31 archetypal ideal woman seems like the embodiment of wisdom is that she is. In fact, she's the personification of this metaphorical woman in the opening chapters of Proverbs, who is godly wisdom, not hiding anywhere, patently, freely available to anyone. And she's calling out into the street, and everyone's just ignoring her. Okay, have you seen any of those kind of discussions in the public square lately, where it seems like common sense is standing right there and just being ignored? Only this is deeper. This is godly wisdom. And so this Proverbs 31 woman is quite an ideal standard, and it's a noble aspiration, similar to the way like men are called to aspire to be like Christ in their marriages. That's the perfect standard. And it's one that no man can meet on his own track record, only by the grace of God. Could you do a decent job, embodying that? But that's the standard, and we will not lower the bar. Only bad things come when you lower that bar, even though it's unreachable. It does no good to aspire to anything less than sinlessness, because otherwise you're aspiring to sin. Okay? Well, women have the same seemingly unreachable standard, because the church in in Ephesians 5, 22 through 33 is also the perfect church, the bride of Christ, all the people of God, that's me included, one day made perfect, having been foreknown and predestined and called, sanctified, justified, glorified. Even though I have sinned, in fact, I've even sinned in ways that, make the opening 9 verses of Proverbs 31 convicting for me. Like that perfection on that day, afforded only by the atoning work of Christ on the cross, that's the standard for women. So men are called to be like the perfect Jesus, and women are called to be the perfect church. Proverbs 31 is another one of those standards of perfection. So don't beat yourself up too badly if you don't measure up to this. Don't beat yourself up to the point that you just give up aspiring unto it at all. Let the text convict you where it convicts, but understand that what we're seeing in a rhetorical description of an ideal woman in Proverbs 31 is exactly that. And moreover, she's the personification of God's wisdom. Okay, so no pressure. Here's the standard. Who can find a wife of noble character? She is far more precious than jewels. All right, this is the first indicator. I think I do have a series. I taught Proverbs a few years ago, and I think it's somewhere way back in our archives. I think it's called Words to the Unwise. And this is a theme that was used to describe wisdom herself, that God's wisdom is more precious than jewels. And in fact, if you go back in that archive, you'll hear me tell the story of my wife's coffee cup she got at a women's conference that was super pink and like flowery and girly. It's like pink and lavender and all the girly colors. And I used it every day because I thought it was funny. And because it said, "You are more precious than jewels" on the inside of the cup. So with every sip of coffee, my self-esteem just went through the roof. But what was funny is that it should have said Proverbs 31:10. And instead it refers to one of the earlier descriptions of wisdom as more precious than jewels. And so it was the wrong proverb, the wrong precious jewels reference. And it was like, my wife made fun of that cup too. And that was partly why I wanted to use it. She pictured the people organizing this conference and like all the steps it takes to get art and copy through to final product, and how like no one even looked the verse up and none of them knew Proverbs 31 well enough to even know that. Like that was, so my wife sometimes makes fun of women's ministries for that reason. She'll go to a women's conference if it's exegetical, meaning like if the teaching is, we're going to come from this passage and this passage, or everything's going to be based on this passage. Like if it's expository in nature, my wife will go. But she oftentimes makes fun of the typical women's ministry event, because a lot of times she says that it's feelings and feel goodery, and it's kind of speaking to women in ways that they just really want to hear. And it never really addresses the actual issues or properly handles scripture and brings that to bear. She's like, you can go to a women's conference and never feel convicted, and that's why I'm skeptical of them. And you can just see biblical error at times, even in the theme of the conference. Like the name of the conference will be a misrepresentation or a paraphrase of a verse that divorces it from its context or even controverts it. And so this one is funny. You'll see this line a lot. And I Googled it recently. There's still like a ton of products available that you can buy that are made, I think, by people, I guess they just aren't Christians, or they've never read Proverbs 31, because they'll misattribute this verse, and they have whole lines of like t-shirts and coffee mugs and kitchen towels and little knickknacks for display with biblical errors on them. But here's the real thing. Who can find a wife of noble character? She is far more precious than jewels. So if you see this artwork referring to a real live woman, it should say Proverbs 31 or Proverbs 31:10b more specifically. That's another thing that my wife says. If she sees the letter after it, she's like, what's wrong with the first half of the verse? Verse 11, the heart of her husband trusts in her, and he will not lack anything good. Wow. Now, this is pretty cool because we look at this and we can also see echoes of Psalm 34. Those who fear him lack no good thing. And it's quite a standard. I mean, even just the first half is incredibly important. The heart of her husband trusts in her. Okay. I trust my wife, and I have no doubt, that my kids are going to be well taken care of by her. And I have no doubt that she is faithful to me. She loves the Lord, and I trust in her. I trusted my whole life savings with her. When the housing market was just out of control here, we're trying to buy a house, I put everything I had into Robinhood and taught Jessie how to do it, and she did better than I did. I mean, that's a whole lot of trust, because I'm a pastor of a church. I can't sit there and watch stocks all day. But she at the time was a stay-at-home mom. She didn't have 100% free hours throughout the day either. Don't get me wrong. She wasn't just sitting there and staring at it, but she could watch it a whole lot more than I could. And I trusted her, and she did amazingly with it. And the Lord blessed that, and we were able to get a house. By the way, there's another story there. Even our offer wasn't the highest offer, but still, the heart of her husband trusts in her. Okay, if your marriage is struggling right now, husbands, do you trust your wives? Okay, if you don't have strong trust, that's step one in your marriage to establish, because each of you has been reticent to bring forth a huge indictment of the other's character. And so instead you're dancing around it, and it's just always there in the room, like this dark looming figure in the corner. You don't trust each other. You think that every word is a lie. One way to counteract this is with huge measures of accountability. And that certainly has its place and its benefit, but it can also have the opposite effect. Sometimes when there's not trust in a marriage, the couple will install accountability software and even like tracking devices, and will like hyper monitor each other's spending, and read each other's emails, not in a way that's like helpful, but in a way that's sort of stalkerish. And these things seem like they're ironclad. Like she'll think it's not possible for my husband to cheat on me, for example. He'll think it's not possible for my wife to not be trustworthy because I know everything. And the problem is that in my experience, just counseling couples who have been through the ringer, people can find their ways around those kind of accountability measures in a way that makes them actually serve as a smokescreen so that they look like everything's disclosed. She'll think that she has total knowledge of all of his activities on the internet. And she'll think that she knows everything about what he's doing with their money and where he is at all times, and unaware of the fact that that's a false sense of security because he's just worked his way around it. It's sad to say, I've seen spouses who have secret cell phones and secret bank accounts, and the other spouse is just totally blindsided by it because they thought they had all these accountability measures in place. Ultimately, accountability does help, all right, but it really just comes down to you and God, because you can put in all sorts of draconian accountability measures. And if someone is gonna sin, if they're not repentant in their heart, they're just gonna find a way around those measures. And then you'll be shocked at how that sin just rots even worse in the dark because no one knows about it, because you've got this seemingly spotless accountability record based on this software or this device or this routine that you have. And so it can be heartbreaking. Like one man had a mistress for years and years, and his wife had no idea until one day, because they were in Paris somehow, his usual accountability smokescreen gave way. So I guess in that regard, it is one of those accountability measures ultimately working, but it took some extenuating circumstances. It took them going to Paris, and it was just heartbreaking, because for years it looked like he was the picture perfect husband. And on the other side too, I've seen a wife start up a secret bank account without him knowing, and he kind of just trusted her to run the finances. But then it turns out that she was planning to leave him for a woman, and that was at our church in Orlando. So if you don't trust your spouse, accountability measures will help, but they'll go only so far. And you need to be aware that there have been couples who have put every accountability measure in place only for things to ultimately get worse in the long run. Because if you're unrepentant from your sin, that's the real issue. Okay. It's not like you need to downgrade to a dumb phone and that'll fix everything in your life. Like, no, man. As a pastor, I've been given phones to dispose of multiple times in my ministry. Like people will come to me and confide and say, like, I just need you to get rid of this for me. And the accountability measures themselves don't compensate for an unrepentant heart. So if there's a lack of trust, begin with your own heart. And if you, as a husband, can't trust your wife, start with your own heart. You can't control your spouse. Okay, I got to say that again. Like, you can't control your spouse. You just can't. And so you might put them on lockdown or something like that, but this is not going to work in the long run. You can control yourself. An immature couple will come to me and Jesse, and each will have a laundry list of issues that the other one needs to work on. And then when asked to produce a similar list about their own issues, the results are much shorter and often misaligned with what the spouse thinks needs to actually be corrected. This is what you are ultimately responsible for in the end, your own heart, your own soul. You are responsible for, if you're the husband, leading your family spiritually, and you take ownership over the spiritual condition of your house, and you swoop in with a swiftness seldom seen when one of your children struggles with sin, right? Or your spouse stumbles in a big way. You move in quick, but those children are going to grow up and leave your house one day. And then your son's going to be his own man. Your daughter's going to be her own woman. They're going to have their own families. Okay. And then where are you? It's you and this stranger potentially. And you are responsible for your stuff. You can't control what your spouse does. You might be under the illusion that you can, but you are not. And you might think that these draconian accountability measures have actually changed her heart or changed his heart, but nothing does that but the Holy Spirit of God. So begin in your own heart. If there's a lack of trust in your marriage, you begin handling what you can. Put accountability measures in place, but don't think of them as the fix-all from heaven. That's the Holy Spirit, not some tracking software, okay? Like, that's not going to actually repair the issue in your marriage. You could be totally aware of each other's whereabouts as a measure of good faith, just to prove, like, this is what I did with my time in the day or something like that. But the bigger issue is in here. And no number of accountability measures will fix a heart that is hell-bent on sinning against God. The heart of the Proverbs 31 woman, however, the heart of her husband trusts in her, and he will not lack anything good. Man, I know that domesticity is sort of out of fashion right now, but can I just give a shout out to like the godly women who want to be wives, and they want to be mothers, I know that second wave feminism, the era sort of personified in Hillary Clinton, um, was like, you go girl, Gloria Steinem, a woman needs a man like a fish needs a bicycle. And you can have it all. You can take birth control and you can find satisfaction in your career. And at last, you can climb the ladder and you can take on the world and you can conquer it and you can fight your way through the glass ceiling. And you ought to have a chip on your shoulder because they're going to deliberately discriminate against you based on your genitalia and choose to pay you less because you have a certain set of reproductive organs. Stupidest thing I've ever heard in my life, and it doesn't bear out when comparing women who have never had children in the workplace to men who had never had to take maternity leave in the same field at the same company at the same time with the same start time, the same resumes, and the same experience level. The woman's actually paid more. All right, my wife and I knew that she was going to take a huge number of years off from full-time work to raise babies, okay? You understand how significant that is? To make human beings. That's what she does. All right, that's what she did. Now she's re-entering the workforce for the first time in like 14 years. And she's loving it and she's killing it and she's climbing the ladder and she's undeniably amazing and she's going to be CFO of that airline. I just know it any day. But we knew going into it, that was the reality. Here's the thing about that message, that a woman can go out and fight, provide. That's Adam's curse. That's the burden placed upon men. And to deride women who are like, I want to be a wife and a mother. And they're told that they're second-class women because they're not entering the world of men. It's like we're erasing the world of maternal glory. And we're looking down on women who don't act like men. Do you see how that's a problem? All right, it's true. Women are perfectly capable of climbing the corporate ladder just like men are, but men and women are different. What men can't do is grow babies in their bodies and feed them exactly what they need, something greater than science itself can't replicate, and something that's tailor-made genetically for that child. Has never existed in human history in this exact compound. I mean, for crying out loud, like it's amazing. It's amazing. Motherhood is phenomenal, and it's a mystery in many ways. Like there's so many things we don't even really know about it, and it's the creation of human beings. Okay, like sure, man, you may work at a car factory, but like those cars are not as significant as the babies that your wife is making at home. It's no small thing. I think it's tragic to diminish that desire to be a wife and a mom. If that's what you want to do, go do it. And it's never dawned on feminists that there are a lot of women who are like, you know what I want to do? I want to be a wife and a mom. And then this woman goes out and a godly man finds her and she finds a godly man and the two of them get married. He works his tail off. He goes out and fights for her. He's the one who provides for her. He goes and slays the dragon so she doesn't have to slay that dragon. For crying out loud, that's a noble thing. That's a sacrificial thing. That's a God-honoring thing that man is taking on that dragon so his wife doesn't have to, okay? Like that's lost on feminism, at least in the second wave. And then the stats bear out in the long run. And do you know the most satisfied women with their sex lives were married Christian women by like a huge margin? It's almost as if the word of God is inspired or something. So a shout out to godly women who were like, I don't want to go be a provider. I want to be a wife and a mom. And that woman who sets out to do that actually accomplishes everything she wanted in her life in a way that the feminists just often don't. And it's a godly thing. It's a great thing. So I affirm you, my sister in Christ, if that's what you believe God's called you to do, he's not called you to go take on the corporate world. He's called you to do the most important work there is, make humans. Right? Like, that's a good, God-honoring, great thing. That's an awesome thing. That's a noble thing. And your husband is honored to provide for you. And if he's done that, thank him if you haven't, because that's a great thing too, that he would make that possible for you financially. That's an awesome thing that he did for you. And it's not him disempowering you. Just ask my wife. She gets everything that she wants, right? Except for a new car right now, because that Pilot still got life in it. So just consider this. Like, it's a great thing when you have a wife like this. Proverbs 31:11 is just true. I mean, if you're a man and you're busting it in the professional world and you're the primary breadwinner for your family, and you got a wife at home, you don't lack anything good. You got no reason to complain, man. God has abundantly provided in your life in a way that is tremendous. And the two of you are a team making this life possible. There are things that I could not have done if it were not for my wife staying at home for the 14 years that she did. There are things that I absolutely would not have accomplished. I could not have finished my degrees. There's no way I could have ever become an author if it weren't for my wife. I mean, like taking care of lots of little kids. I mean, there's a time we had like 4 kids in our house under the age of 8. Like that was chaotic, man. That was difficult. I think there's a lower ratio in some daycares than that. There were women out there getting paid for dealing with fewer kids than my wife was dealing with. At least they're her own kids, but she wasn't getting paid for it. It was not easy. It was not easy. But wow, the benefits that brought to the whole family. In fact, look, it continues along that same theme. She rewards him with good, not evil, all the days of her life. This wife of noble character is a reward to her husband. She brings good, not evil, all the days of her life. What does it look like for a wife to bring evil into the home? A wife of ignoble character who brings evil into the home. All right, there's a billion permutations you can imagine there, but just think of the antithesis of what's described in verse 11. Verse 13, she selects wool and flax and works with willing hands. Okay, you're going to see how the Proverbs 31 woman is incredibly industrious. She doesn't have the classic corporate kind of job, but she's hustling, man. Like she's an investor and she's a hard worker. She selects wool and flax and works with willing hands. She's like the merchant ships bringing her food from far away. She rises while it's still night. Okay, she's getting up at like 4:30 a.m. and provides food for her household and portions for her female servants. Look, she also provides. She's getting up early and she's serving the servants. They have an overabundance in this household such that even like the staff are blessed. She's serving the servants. Look at this. She's a real estate mogul. She evaluates a field and buys it. She plants a vineyard with her earnings. She's also a wine entrepreneur. Like this woman can make things from wool and flax, and she can make real estate deals. Oh, and by the way, she started a vineyard. Like she's got so much going on. And look at verse 17. She draws on her strength and reveals that her arms are strong. All right. Do you remember the "we can do it" woman? From like American, like the American side of, I guess you wouldn't really call it propaganda, but like that iconic image of a woman like with a bandana around her head. A lot of these women in the Greatest Generation were making the parachutes and making the weaponry that were used to, frankly, in no short order, like defeat evil. Okay, that was a pivotal time. And she's a Proverbs 31:17 woman. She draws on her strength and reveals that her arms are strong. She's flexing. This woman is wheeling and dealing in real estate. She's looking at the field and you can just picture her. Well, she wouldn't have a beard because women don't have beards, okay? But she would look at the field and she'd consider the fertility of the field itself and its proximity to water, and its potential rise in value, its highest and best use. Does it have sewer? Does it have septic? Does it have power? And she can evaluate all this. She She has a real estate license and she's logging on to MLS and she's keeping track of vacant land. And she evaluates it and she finds one and she moves in and she makes an offer. That offer is accepted. All that's entailed in a modern sense in the first half of verse 16. And the second half of verse 16 shows a business savvy and a tolerance for risk. And even, by the way, the ability to wait for gratification. The ability to wait for gratification is one of the number one indicators of success. This woman has planted a vineyard. That is a long-term prospect. She has spent a lot of money on this project because she has bought the field, determined that it would be good for grapes, and she has planted the vineyard with her earnings. So you can imagine that the earnings are probably from this right here. She selects wool and flax and works with willing hands. So in verse 13, she's a clothier. Am I saying that word right? I don't think I've ever heard it said. I've just read it. She's making something out of fabric. And with her earnings, she's scaling up. She's buying real estate and going into the wine business with her earnings from her clothing business. So this housewife's side hustle game is next level. I mean, she was able to save up her earnings from her clothing business and buy real estate and start a totally new business in an unrelated field. That is so risky. It's awesome. But it also indicates, like her husband is out there as the breadwinner and she's got these side hustles that are profitable unto themselves. Okay, now I may be reading too much into the text here, but the earnings, you don't earn anything from buying a field, okay? You have to spend a lot of money on a field. So the earnings described in verse 16, I believe, were earned from her work in verse 13. So this is kind of how my wife and I structured our finances when we were first married, and it's always paid off. Her money that she earns is in the same bank account. Okay, everything goes into the same account. Don't miss out on interest earnings. It's just smart to pool your finances, and it's kind of a no-brainer because you're literally one flesh in God's eyes. So of course you're going to be one bank account. And that money that Jesse earns, there have been some tight times where it got us out of a jam, but for the most part, it's been used in side investments. She literally investigated this company called Boxable, and we bought some shares, and they're closing in on what could be an IPO. They just picked their symbol for the stock ticker. That doesn't mean that they're having an IPO tomorrow, but she was able to show me kind of projections on the profitability of that investment because we bought in really early, and now they've built plants in Nevada and other places, and they're looking really good. The point is, that was totally my wife's find. And she was not the breadwinner for the family, but she has absolutely more than pulled her weight financially, even while not maintaining a constant corporate job. Also, she's incredibly good at finding deals, and she prides herself. Even today, something showed up at the house, and she was like, she'd play this game where she's like, guess how much this costs? And I guess. And she's like, guess how much I paid for it? And guess. And we do this all the time with stuff that we need. No one can find a deal like she can. It's absolutely incredible. And when you add up all the savings just from her research into deals, like it comes to the amount of a salary almost. Like it's almost like we have a third person working in our house, and that is my wife's thriftiness, because she's been able to find deals like no one's business. Look, she rewards him with good, not evil, all the days of her life. She selects wool and flax and works with willing hands. She's like the merchant ships, bringing her food from far away. She's got excellent taste in food. She rises while it's still night, provides food for her household and portions for her female servants. She evaluates a field and buys it. She plants a vineyard with her earnings. Have you planted a vineyard? I haven't. That sounds insanely hard. She draws on her strength and reveals that her arms are strong. Yeah, you go, girl. You flex, because good grief, you are one of the most successful entrepreneurs I've ever seen. She sees that her profits are good and her lamp never goes out at night. Imagine the kind of security that brings to the household. She sees that her profits are good. She's looking at the numbers. She's not afraid to look at the spreadsheet. She doesn't open up her banking app with dread. She knows that her side hustles are killing it. And she's bringing blessings in that even the servants are blessed by. She's serving the servants. She's got so much. She's got so much excess that she knows her lamp's never going to go out. Now there's an excellent stock of oil. She extends her hands to the spinning staff, and her hand holds the spindle. She's got chops. She's got skills. She's got skills that are profitable, by the way. Look at this. They have so much excess. The part of her ministry in this family is helping other people. Her hands reach out to the poor. This is more than a metaphor. This is significant. It indicates something about her heart toward the poor. She doesn't just virtue signal. She reaches her hand out to the poor. She extends her hands to the needy. That's the second half of verse 20. She's not just virtue signaling. She's actually feeding the poor and the needy. They have so much in savings and they're financially so well off that part of her ministry is just stewarding the excess in a way that benefits the community. She's not afraid for her household when it snows. Other people might freak out at snowfall, but everyone says for all in her household are doubly clothed. Everyone has seen A Christmas Story at this point. It runs on Christmas Eve all day long on, I think, TNT. And you see that kid with so much snow gear on that he can't even get up when he falls. That's a good mom right there. He's doubly clothed. That's what this house is like. She makes her own bed coverings. See, I told you she's good with fabric. But it's not just any fabric. It's the finest made. Her clothing is fine linen and purple. Now, lest you think that this is just sort of a random added superfluous detail, purple clothing as dealt by Lydia or Dorcas, whom you meet in Acts chapter 16, was extremely wealthy because she specialized in purple linen. The color purple as a dye in the ancient world required a really involved process refining excretions from shellfish. So that purple shade that you see when you crack open like a clam, that's the exact shade of purple. And that's why purple was associated with royalty. It was so hard to produce purple dye that purple clothing was reserved for the king and queen. It was so rare. But this Proverbs 31 woman makes her own duvets and comforters. And her clothing is fine linen. And by the way, it is the color of royalty. Her husband is known at the city gates, where he sits among the elders of the land. Okay, this is new insight to the Proverbs 31 woman's husband. Think about this entrepreneurial, strong, literally flexing woman, and how brilliant she is, how incredibly hardworking she is. She gets up at 4:30 in the morning and she sells clothes and probably bed linens. And with those earnings, she turns that into a startup, a vineyard that's probably going to take a year or more to yield a profit. But that's okay. Financially, they're already set. She's taking side hustle money and then 10xing it. All right. She's going to sell her wine per bottle for way more than she was able to sell like clothing or duvet cover. This is a trajectory where not only do they currently have enough, but it looks like financially this family is going to have generational wealth. Like when mom and dad die, they're going to leave a huge inheritance to their kids, probably even the asset of that vineyard, for example. So it's not greed, because we can see that she's extending care to the poor and to the needy. Part of her ministry is seeing to it that even people in her community, everyone in her house is doubly clothed. Snow is not a big deal. We have enough oil for our lamps to get through the bomb cyclone. Okay, like we're just fine here. And by the way, like she's on an upward trajectory anyway. This doesn't seem to indicate a lack of contentment. Okay, it's not that. It's how many more people is she going to be able to help with all of this extra wealth? there's this philanthropic ministry that this woman runs out of the excess produced within her household. And now we can see who her husband is. Think about how amazing this woman is. Such a woman is not going to marry a deadbeat. Such a woman is not going to even give a date to a guy with no prospects, with no ambition, of little character, and no work ethic. Like you can't imagine a woman like the one described in this text dealing with slothfulness in her husband. Such a woman is going to be attracted to a godly, upright man who is at least as hardworking as she is. At least, not more hardworking. So if you look at the Proverbs 31 woman and you're like, Jesse, that's me. I'm one of those. I'm hustling. I work hard. I earn my own money. I'm looking for a godly man. It's hard to find one. I'm thinking about just settling for this guy who has no prospects. Okay, consider Proverbs 31:23, the husband of such a godly woman. Now, he is an elder at the city gates. Her husband is known at the city gates where he sits among the elders of the land. Now, as an elder myself, I can tell you that it could be that the wife works harder than the husband, because what does the husband do? Well, verse 23 says, literally, he sits. All right, so he's not getting up crazy early every morning and working a vineyard. He's just sitting, but he's in a role that is like sort of tantamount to, honestly, a city councilman seems kind of low compared to what an elder of Israel would do. He is kind of like the mayor, one of the mayors, if that makes any sense. He is known at the city gates, meaning he has a proven track record of bearing fruit, making wise decisions that govern well and in a way that is godly. And he sits among the elders of the land. So he is esteemed and he is respected. And he is a man worthy of such a woman. Verse 24, she makes and sells linen garments. She delivers belts to the merchants. So she hasn't given up her side hustle in textiles. Maybe that's the right word. Because she's gone into the wine business, but that's a startup. In the meantime, she's still got earnings selling linen garments and delivering belts to the merchants. So they must live in a coastal town, and she's capitalizing on the trade opportunities. Strength and honor are her clothing, and she can laugh at the time to come. So we're getting away from the specifics of her business dealings and her commodities, and now we're talking about her character again. Strength. Okay, you'd be amazed how much strength it takes to be a mom, to be a wife. It takes incredible strength, and I can't begin to impress upon you how much strength I've seen in my wife burying a child. I mean, Jessie went through the ringer, and she won't talk about it, but she almost died. She had to have 3 blood transfusions. She suffered from preeclampsia severely. She had alarming hypertension, all at the same time, while the twins were very premature, and Aiden especially was clinging to life in the NICU. One of the doctors sat me down just to make sure that I'd grasped the gravity of the situation. Asher was very premature. He ended up just fine. He had some issues to overcome, but the Lord has worked miracles in that boy. He's got his own testimony. I feel like it needs to be shared when he's ready. And it's got to come from him, but there are some things that he won't remember because he was a baby. Like we had just having a baby in the NICU with the issues that Asher had would have been pretty traumatic in its own right. Aiden was born with distal tracheal atresia. He was a medical anomaly. The survival record for a baby born with distal tracheal atresia was 5 minutes. And so as the months went on, you can imagine how significant it became to be one of the surgeons who operated on Aiden, because every surgery was a new medical precedent. Um, and my wife, meanwhile, was dealing with hypertension and preeclampsia, required multiple blood transfusions. And another reason the doctors were talking to me was just to make sure that she would spend some time resting, because I'd have to go to work, and we just lived at the hospital. It got to the point where they just let me keep my bracelet, past its expiration date, I guess, because they would just recognize me. I lived at Florida Hospital South, right off the interstate in Orlando, and had to go preach, had to go do ministry events, had to go drum for NBA All-Star Weekend in 2012 while living at the hospital. And in all of that, when I'd get back, Jessie was invariably not in her room. She was in a wheelchair between two incubators in the NICU, and she's missing, and it's time for someone to help address some of her needs because she almost died. The big takeaway from that talk was you need to prepare yourself. The possibility exists that you and your son Austin will go home from this hospital alone. Okay, I was looking at either having a family, having a family of 5, or the possibility exists that we'd be a family of 2 again. Only the 2 would be me and Austin, because all 3 of them, Jessie and Aiden and Asher, faced some lethal circumstances. And Jessie was so incredibly strong through all of it. It was amazing. And if I'm totally honest, even after Aiden died, the way we look back on those years, I wish now that we had gone to counseling for it right away. But we did manage to get through those years immediately after Aiden's death, taking turns being the strong one in a way. I wouldn't let Jessie see me break down, but she could tell the stuff was weighing on me constantly, and the grief was just all eclipsing. And even in those dark nights of the soul after Aiden died, Jessie's concern was, I don't want my grief to make me a bad mother for Asher, because, by the way, here we are home from the hospital, and Aiden has passed away, but we've now got this premature baby with torticollis and jaundice and all sorts of other things, and allergies and all these other prognoses. I mean, they threw all sorts of prognoses at us regarding Aiden's future and Asher's future and Jessie's medical condition, and now all that dust has kind of settled. We got to make sure that while we're grieving Aiden's death, we don't neglect this still premature baby that we have at home. And she was an excellent mother, even while grieving. I knew that she, at times, she was not at all suicidal. It was, she would just rather face death than live in that grief for a life sentence. She said that our youth was her biggest burden. She's like, I became a bereaved mother in my 20s, and I have a pretty long life expectancy, and I hate that. And it broke my heart. Now, God's brought some healing to our hearts over the years. 80% of couples who lose a child get a divorce. Each of us knew that. Neither said it to the other. We just kind of knew it was out there. And in time, she ended up dealing with her grief better than I dealt with mine. There was a year there where I didn't see her laugh or smile. That was a dark time. And I, meanwhile, looked like I could stand there with a Superman S on my chest. And this actually led to some dissension in our marriage that we had to deal with. because she was looking at me, not marveling at how well I was doing, just concerned that I was about to crash. That I wasn't letting myself feel the full weight of the grief. Instead, I was just kicking the grief can down the road. She was starting to come out of it about the time that the full weight of it hit me, like over a year later. And so I feel like she did a better job in that initial grief than I did in mine. I can't begin to express to you how much strength it takes to be a wife and to be a mom. Strength and honor are her clothing. Hey, now suddenly this went from a chick flick to the movie Gladiator. Strength and honor. Honor. Okay, we've talked about strength. Honor. What is this? Well, remember at the very beginning, we already know that she's a wife of noble character. That is something quite worthy of honor. It's not likely that this woman is going to appear in some sort of feminist hall of fame because she has dedicated her life to serving others, serving the needy, serving the poor, serving even the servants in her own household, making sure that everyone in her household is doubly clothed. And that is itself quite honorable. The problem with both like modern pop masculinity and modern pop femininity is that neither seems at all concerned with self-sacrifice. Both seem quite hell-bent on self-aggrandizement. Like there are tons of voices out there eager to take in the young men of the US who are sick and tired of being raised to act more like women. And the way that you rebel against a feminist culture that has really shaped modern public education in many ways is you go full masculine. So take a look at the stats on like high school guys. I think that Gen Z men are going to be more conservative than millennial men. I think that they are rebelling against a system that was shaped by feminism, and as a result, they are running into the arms of Joe Rogan and Andrew Tate. And these are not men who advocate a Christ-like, self-sacrificial axiom for masculinity. In fact, particularly in Andrew Tate's case, I think Joe Rogan actually just interviews people, and he interviews people to an audience that makes him the most influential interviewer in human history. Okay, just by the numbers, no one has ever come close to what he's accomplished with his audience. But with Andrew Tate, what little I know of his content, I do have to disclose that, is enough to know that it's self-aggrandizing, that he is his own God, and he encourages other men to be the same way. And that makes for the most demonically god-awful husband imaginable. So he's not ready to be a husband based on what little I've seen. If it was given in good faith because it came from his own mouth and I saw it on video and it was contextualized, assuming all that's accurate, unless someone has just like smeared him, I don't see self-sacrifice. I don't see self-sacrifice being called for in third wave feminism. I see them overlooking the sacrifices made by women who have chosen to prioritize their children over their careers. Such women seem to be shamed, in fact, in third wave feminism. And I don't see modern pop masculinity calling for men to live like Jesus. We revered the men of the greatest generation because they did sacrifice themselves. They sacrificed their lives. And there is no greater love that any man has for this, that he lay down his life for his friends. That self-sacrifice that is lost in third wave feminism and pop culture masculinity is quite present in the Proverbs 31 woman. She is honorable. She is clothed in strength and honor. Several thousand years before Russell Crowe played Gladiator. And she can laugh at the time to come. Such a sense of security comes only, I think, from following God's will for your life. Do you remember how much you freaked out the first time you got a flat tire as a teenager? Do you remember how, maybe I'm just speaking from my own experience. First time I had a flat tire and I actually had to change one, and it wasn't on the parking pad at home, and my dad wasn't there to make sure I did it right. And I was in Florida, and it was 100 degrees, and there was sand on the side of the road, and I had to find like a plank in a ditch to put under my jack so that it wouldn't just sink into the sand, but it would actually lift up this heavy vehicle. And I remember feeling nervous and anxious about it. And then it worked out okay. And I came back and I was like so proud to announce, like, I changed the tire on the side of the road in the sand. And my parents were like, yeah, good job, buddy. But that kind of thing wouldn't have really stressed my dad out. It's because I was young and I hadn't really dealt with it before. But today, a flat tire is no big deal at all. It doesn't even get my pulse up. I got to teach my sons how to do it, in fact. And that comes with experience. This woman can laugh at the time to come. What's coming around the corner? A huge budget shortfall. All right, we'll deal with it. What's coming around the corner? A record-setting winter. Everyone in my house is doubly clothed. What's coming around the corner? A famine. Well, we've got silos and reserves, perhaps. Whatever the specifics are, she can laugh at the time to come. And we know that it's coupled with the fact that strength and honor are her clothing. And I don't think that that's a coincidence. I don't think that these two halves are unrelated to one another. She can laugh at the time to come because she is clothed with strength and with honor. What's kind of cool is that my wife and I have been through, we're still pretty young, but we've been through a couple of things in our life that would have been described as kind of cataclysmic nuclear disasters. Like, we've kind of lost everything more than once and have built our life back with God's grace stronger and better than ever, more than once, such that if there were a similar cataclysm to come our way, we would just do it again. All right. Now that's presumptuous of me, but it's also built on a pretty faithful track record on God's part. It's not like God hasn't allowed bad things to happen to us, but when he has allowed it, or when even like my own sin has contributed to it or incurred it, he's shown us grace and he has enabled us to continue living lives of holiness, continuing in strength and honor in such a way that nothing really scares us anymore. And we're just now at the age where I can really relate to that verse. All right. I married a woman who is clothed in strength and honor. She can laugh at the time to come. I can come back and I could tell her some bad news is coming, and it's possible she would even laugh at it. I don't know if we're at laughter yet, but I just now get this verse. It took going through a couple of nuclear disasters in our life and seeing God put us back together again, better and stronger than ever before, for me to really realize that. Her mouth speaks wisdom, and loving instruction is on her tongue. All right, so when this woman speaks, what comes out is the word of God. Now, you got to understand that the word wisdom has just been used in the book of Proverbs in one of the final verses, okay? So even though Proverbs jumps around topic to topic and kind of amalgamates them all into a comprehensive series of just practical aphorisms from God that make your life work. That's why the book of Proverbs is the atheist's favorite book, because it's so practical. By this time, you have read 30 other chapters on wisdom and what wisdom is. It's kind of a reveal actually in verse 26 that she is the personification of the woman wisdom, Sophia, who was introduced in the opening chapters of Proverbs. So that's why I say what comes out of her mouth is God's word. Her mouth speaks wisdom. Okay, this is kind of the reveal. Here she is. Like, she is everything that we've studied so far in the Proverbs realized in a woman. And loving instruction is on her tongue. That word loving really matters. You got to speak the truth and speak the truth in love. That's a New Testament concept, but several centuries before, it was in the Proverbs 31 woman. Loving instruction is on her tongue. She watches over the activity of her household and is never idle. Idleness is bad for men and women, I guess. It's not good for man to be alone, is what God said of Adam in Eden. I mean, you can kind of imagine that and just see, like, imagine it from God's perspective. We've created all the species and ecosystems interacting across the climates of the entire earth. And it's all good. Every phase has been good. And then you got a naked dude in a garden, and God's like, yeah, that's not good. So he creates woman from man, and she is his helpmate. And the two of them together are very good. Very good. But what's bad is when you're idle. David fell into temptation because at the time when kings went off to war, he stayed home. And that's when he noticed Bathsheba bathing, and then had no idea in that moment that when he bit down on the bait, concealing the rusty barbed hook of the devil's temptation, it would lead to him committing adultery, committing murder, I believe committing treason against God's throne over Israel. Idleness is bad. It's bad. But this woman watches over the activities of her household. She's taking kind of an executive role. She's watching over the activities, and she's aware of everything that's happening. Now, this one's pretty easily relatable in today's context. How many of you guys have like a calendar somewhere in your house? Usually it's a dry erase board with some Bible verse at the top of it. For my wife, it's a series of journals. We call each other Chooch, Italian for moron. We didn't know that until we've been calling each other that for 10 years. And she makes schedules in these journals. We gave away little journals for Mother's Day last year. She still uses it for what I call Chooch schedules. And so she's watching over the activities of our household. She's never idle. Her children rise up and call her blessed. Her husband also praises her. Many women have done noble deeds, but you surpass them all. Let's talk about these two verses coupled together, because the opinion that the people in your house have of you should matter more than the public perception of you. I've known this personally. I'm sorry if I keep making everything about me. I'm just speaking from personal anecdotes that have to do with my wife. I know what it's like to kind of have your name dragged through the mud, but when you come into your home, you're still respected and loved, and it matters more to you. I think it's better by far to kind of be in the gutter as far as the public's perception of you, but you're still respected and admired and loved in your own home by your wife and by your children, because they actually know you. All right. They see you all the time, and they see you at your worst moments. That this woman's children who see her when she's maybe stressed out, and they see her when she's tired, when she's exhausted and she's worn out from trading, linens with merchants and starting vineyards from scratch. Like, you can imagine, they see her at her weak moments, and they still rise up and call her blessed. Her husband also praises her. And you can see the scope of their praise. Many women have done noble deeds. Okay, they're granting that there are other noble women out there, but you surpass them all. Now, I don't know the other women. I think that we're dealing with a literally proverbial woman. We're in the book of Proverbs after all. And she's an archetype and she's a standard. But it may not be overly exaggerated praise to say that she surpasses them all, because she is probably the most impressive woman I've ever seen. And she's just described in these verses of Proverbs 31. But even if it is praise that is overly exaggerated and super biased because her children and her husband love her so much, that's how they feel about her. That's how they feel about her. Right? It's cool that her children and husband think that she is the greatest woman of all. Charm is deceptive and beauty is fleeting, but a woman who fears the Lord will be praised. This is kind of cool because verse 30 stands alone. It almost doesn't need the context before it. I think you appreciate it more when you know that it's in the context of the Proverbs 31 woman, but it preaches by itself, and you're not committing error if you just take it at face value. It's also interesting. This is the very first indicator about her physical appearance. And the reason that's shocking to me is that femininity itself is being lost right now, culture wide. Femininity itself is under assault, in that, for crying out loud, men are dominating everything. And it's under the watch of, it was under the watch of a feminist regime, really. Like, men are literally dominating women in women's own sports. And my state that I live in, is fighting a federal mandate on this foolish notion. I mean, it's tough. It's tough to be a woman right now. When you keep getting beaten by men at track when that was your scholarship hope, for example. I mean, it's tough. But most of what I see kind of coming at my daughter right now really is going to emphasize appearance. It's like you've got this crisis of femininity, and what they're dealing with really has to do with aesthetics and appearance and beauty. And that doesn't appear in the ultimate text about the ultimate woman until way down here in the second to last verse. Now, it's not in the text, but it could indicate that this Proverbs 31 woman isn't going to win a beauty contest, because what it says about charm is that it's deceptive. And what it says about beauty is that it's fleeting. It makes no remark about her appearance. And if anything, it's possible that this woman is not going to win a beauty contest. But good grief, you'd be an idiot not to marry her right away. Because look at this stuff that she does. Look at what a powerhouse woman she is. Charm is deceptive. It's true. You can be really charming and say horrible things. Beauty is fleeting. Okay? Now, wait until we've gone through Proverbs, and I'll talk more about taking delight in the wife of your youth, letting her satisfy you always. There's more to say about this. Jesse and I were talking about it, and I kind of find it creepy when guys want to date younger girls. And that's just a personal feeling on the matter that's totally irrelevant, because I'm married anyway. Who cares about my personal opinion on it? But it's because of this. What I genuinely feel is that my wife is becoming more beautiful to me. Really and truly. Really and truly. I mean, like, she's been through it, man. We've had 5 kids, and one of them was like a medical history making anomaly of a pregnancy. And I genuinely, like, when you consider the effects that motherhood has had on her body, what that means to me as her husband and as the father of those children, is that she alone bears, like, for example, the genetic evidence that Aiden existed. His genetic content is now a part of her. And so he still has a physical presence on the earth, and it's only found within her. And that makes her the most beautiful woman in the world to me, because there's no other woman on the planet who lives continually with even like the genetic information of our son, Aiden Isaiah Campbell, than my wife. And so she's obviously still a babe, and even just last night, she was going on about this new diet she's trying out and all that stuff. And she's skinny as can be. Her mom called her to tell her she's losing too much weight. We had Jessie Day, and she wanted flowers from Pike Place Market. So guess what she got? I was also scoping out spots for the worship team to come do some impromptu worship services, but she's always been beautiful, just undeniably beautiful. That was what blew me away about her, was that she was so godly that she was going to go plant an illegal church, and she's also smoking hot. It's like, it's no wonder every red-blooded marriage-age man in Pensacola was literally crowding around her at this Christian concert. It was no wonder. But really and truly, like, even now as we're in our 40s, like, she's more beautiful to me than ever. She is more beautiful to me than ever. A woman who fears the Lord will be praised. So in one sense, you could look at Proverbs 31:30 as the ugly girl's anthem, but I think that there's more to it than that. It's really a call to fear the Lord. It's not telling you that beauty is bad. It's just fleeting. If that's all you got, you've chosen a really short runway. Like, if particularly beauty that comes naturally just with being young, the kind of beauty that everyone has at some point. If that's all you got going for you, you've chosen something that is expiring and it's inevitable, and you're going to hate aging. For you, aging is going to feel like dying because your worth is tied up in your charm and in your beauty. But those things don't mean anything compared to a wife of noble character, a woman who fears the Lord. That's the kind of woman who will be praised. Give her the reward of her labor, and let her works praise her at the city gates. This is why I keep talking about my wife while teaching this passage, because I've just seen firsthand, and I have benefited firsthand. I'm the recipient of blessings from God because I married a woman who has this text memorized and was shocked to learn that not every woman has it memorized. Give her the reward for her labor. All right? Speak highly of godly women. Let them be the new standard. Let her works praise her at the city gates. What's cool about this is that it's not even other people talking about her. It's just that the fruit of her ministry, caring for the poor, caring for the needy, starting a vineyard, having a clothing and a linen business that deals potentially internationally, dealing with merchants. That is stuff that is self-evidencing. It's self-evidentiary. Like, it just bears fruit itself, and you just can't deny the results produced by such an industrious woman, a hardworking woman. Charm is deceptive and beauty is fleeting, but a woman who fears the Lord will be praised. Give her the reward of her labor, and let her works praise her at the city gates. Husbands, if you're not in the habit of speaking encouraging words over your wife and praising her for the great things that she does, you need to do it. Men can go a long time without a compliment. All right? But you can draw confidence from an encouraging word for months on end or years after the fact. All right? But women are different. Speak those words of praise. When those thoughts occur to you, articulate them out loud. And when you see her doing something amazing, say it. And when you think she's the most beautiful woman in the world, say it. This is the Proverbs 31 woman. It is a high ideal, a beautiful archetype, and the personification of wisdom herself, having been expounded upon for 30 chapters. The final takeaway, the final proverb, the very end of the most practical book on wisdom ever written is the standard for a godly wife. I'm blessed to know many women who aspire into this and who embody it in many ways. Happy Mother's Day week. Thank you so much for listening to Proverbs 31, at least that is verses 10 through 31 with me.